And I don't even think people read books anymore.
Yeah, we're huge reader. If you could see in the back, see that's books.
And those are just the ones he took with him, folks. He had about 40 boxes of books.
Oh,
Majority
no,
of his house is books.
We brought a lot more than just
did?
that back there. That's the stuff that hasn't been put away yet. I mean, each one of us brought a bookshelf, and
That's crazy.
It's in our rooms, yeah. But yeah, I could verify that if you put comic books on top of your book, it fits.
Yeah, it's comic book size.
It's a little wider, but you could absolutely fit comic books on top of it, and it won't overlap.
That's good to know. They're like, so if you put my book around comic books, it would serve as a protective layer. So everyone buy 2 copies of my book and use it to protect your smaller books or comic books or graphic novels or whatever you want to call them.
Actually, I have 2 copies of the first appearance of X-23, which is the female Wolverine. Sitting on top right now because it's like I have to get that read. So it's there.
Why do they call her X-23?
Long story short, essentially it's Wolverine's. It's a female clone of Wolverine.
Oh,
wow. She was actually in the movie Wolverine, the last one that came out.
Okay. Oh, so, yeah. There was the not his daughter thing.
Yeah. It was a genetically modified clone of Wolverine and all that stuff. So it's the first appearance of her back in the 2000s. I was, reading a bunch of comics at the time, and just odd, comic came out, NYX. I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Turns out that this, small 4-issue series came out with this new character, came on like Gangbusters, became a big thing in the Marvel universe, and I happen to have 2 copies of her first one, and so
that's very cool.
I got to get them graded.
Does she have the sideburns too?
She may smoke cigars.
Cigars. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If I knew that my body was entirely self-healing, I would probably smoke a lot of cigars. Like the things that I would do differently. If I was just like, wait, you mean I'm just going to recover from that? Well.
All right, we're ready to do this.
Yeah, I guess so. We're 3 minutes past the hour. Do you want to ask questions, or do you want me to, or how do you want to do this thing?
I'm at an awkward angle right here for everything.
Okay, I'll do it then.
All
do it all by myself.
And then next week we'll make Brent do it.
Hopefully. Make Brent do it from a U-Haul. Brad asks, is it relevant to specify separate drives for the data and logs in the SQL cloud environment, since I/O is not the limiting factor? So the cloud is tough because you don't know where your disks are, who they're hanging out with, what they're doing. So separate drives. I'm not sure that's going to buy you much unless you specify. So different cloud vendors do it differently. So like different size files, different size drives can sometimes get you better speeds. So basically, the more you pay for your drives, the better the throughput is on them. So if you have a higher tier of drives, or if you have write specific drives that you want to put like tempdb or log files on, that would make sense to me. But just separating them for the sake of separating them, I don't think that's going to buy you much. Especially just because in the cloud it's so easy to up instance sizes. It might make a whole lot more sense to solve your storage problems by adding memory rather than trying to add more storage or separate things out. How about you, Richie? Any thoughts on cloud drives, I/O things?
No. I mean, it's such a different world up in the cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think separating will really buy you much. But then again, I don't deal with a lot of the SQL-ness in the cloud. I've been doing a lot of managed providers where you don't even have a choice of where the logs go. They just go.
Yeah. You create a database and they go where they damn well please.
Yep.
Yeah, let's see. Julie asks, can you explain the licensing for 2014-16 SQL Server Dev, especially the not for use with production data? Does that mean you can't copy production data to the dev box for testing and development? No. What that means is, as with all things licensing, please check with your licensing representative, whoever you buy stuff from, to make sure on this. But generally what it means is that you cannot be serving up a production workload from that server. So you can't have customers going in and doing stuff But if you have your developers going in and testing new code and new indexes on there, then that's considered development. You can use production data for that, but should you?
No. No, you absolutely should not. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't use production data. One-off that happened to me many, many years ago, where you had production emails or actually emails of users in there, and now you start testing, email functionality, and all of a sudden emails start going out to customers from dev boxes and things like that. But the question is, do you want actually production data in the hands of your developers? Wouldn't it be better if you actually had a set of data that you handcrafted to go off and test certain things that doesn't usually occur in your production data or may not be in your current production set? There's something to be said about having a known set of data outside of production so that you could do really some valid unit tests or valid system integration tests with. So I don't usually recommend copying production over into a test or dev environment. That will, maybe if you're doing some system testing or some other type of speed test or whatever, but even then it gets kind of wonky because you're probably not on the same hardware as you are in production anyway. So I don't recommend just copying over production and say, hey, dev, go for it. You need to think about it a little bit more and have dev create some data so they will go through some tests. So when you are running it, hey, what about this situation or that situation? What if the data gets out of whack here? How are you going to? How's the system going to go about that? Especially if there's some sort of regression in the software.
Yeah, big thing from there's a lot of tools and products out there that can help you sort of scrub data or like munch stuff up so that it's using it's like you take a production data set, you flip things around, you kind of make it illegible to normal people. But that kind of comes back to another thing where it's like you have to be very comfortable if you're going to give developers access to that data with the data you're giving them access to, because for everything that people worry about with like developers walking out the door with like intellectual property, whatever else, walking out there with customer data is arguably even worse because you take that to a competitor. It's a much bigger edge to have a customer list rather than like some stored procedure code that any ding dong could write. Yeah. So be careful with that too. But I think further that, if you're already giving your developers access to production to do whatever developer-y nonsense they have to do, you're running into a whole different set of problems. So aside from the fact that you shouldn't be using production data in dev, you also shouldn't be giving your developers access to crazy production data in production. That's how I would sum that up. Got off on a little bit of a tangent there.
Yeah, well, that's how I roll.
So, you're wearing a Cubs shirt. Are you looking forward to more baseball postseason fun this year? Or
oh no, we're totally going to tank. We're awful.
Totally going to tank. Oh,
yeah, we
just making sure.
We lost like the last 2 or last 3 or whatever. We're terrible. So if we win the next 2 or something, we're going to World Series. But as of right now, after last night's game, we're not doing jack.
Yeah, Mets suck this year too. Like everyone, they're just like trading people. Like, no, go ahead, go have fun.
The Mets were amazing because they were going to World Series after 11 games, 11 straight or whatever like that, and then all of a sudden, everyone went to the hospital and just never came out.
Oh, like grandparents. Fun. All right. Daryl says, okay, so Daryl actually has a bunch of questions about Brent's senior DBA class videos. I apologize that Brent is not here to answer them, rather. Whoa, boy. Brain went wild on that one. A little high and outside on that one. So what I would say, Daryl, is if you have questions that you want Brent to answer about his videos, I would leave them either as comments on the videos or drop them an email with everything kind of in there. I don't know that I haven't watched the senior DBA class videos in a while, so I don't know that I would be able to answer them terribly well. The first one, though, is like sort of answerable. Brent talks about how the current vote and how it floats between both nodes. Daryl has 1 for each of current nodes. So the big question for me is, do you have an even number of votes or an odd number of votes? Do you have dynamic quorum or dynamic witness? Like for me, there's a lot more than just like is each node having a vote a good idea? It's like you want to make sure that you have an odd number of votes so that your cluster will stay up if like one thing kind of poops the bed in a not fun way. So I would need a little bit more information about that to give you further advisements. Let's see. Another question. When I run the failover cluster manager configuration check, it tells me I have no file share and gives the name of my file share. I have no idea what you're up to over there. I'm sorry. That's closed as off topic, too localized. Let's see here. Ooh, Brian has a question that I think would be good for dba.stackexchange.com. I have a circular logic issue with database ownership permissions. Yeah, so that's a tough word problem for me to solve right here. So I would say post that on dba.stackexchange.com with as much information, as much like, hopefully obfuscated code as you're willing to share about the issue, and hopefully you will get an answer from someone who has been through that before. Any other thoughts on that? I don't think. Move some stuff through.
Yeah, my mind's blank on that stuff.
Yeah, we specifically avoid security anything in our client work because it is such a hassle and liability, and like getting like sometimes I feel even dirty when like Blitz is like, these people are all sysadmins, and I'm like, I don't want to see their names. I don't want like what they're doing. Yeah, Tammy says, poops the bed in a non-fun way as opposed to pooping the bed in a fun way. Yes, Tammy, there are different ways to poop the bed that are varying degrees of fun. It's a wild world out there. Let's see. Ooh, long questions, short questions, all sorts of questions. Questions. Let's see. Daryl asks, should I have canary tables on my AGs? Only if you care about knowing how up-to-date they are when they fail over. So yes. Most people have AGs thinking that they're not going to have any data loss or very little data loss. So I would say generally canary tables are a good idea. All right. Pablo says, not ignoring you, Pablo. My dev team always blames ORMs for bad performance. How does Entity Framework limit tuning? That sounds like a Richie question.
Yeah, the real problem is that it's kind of obfuscated, right? So when you write a query for Entity Framework, you have to use their proprietary whatever ORM, and you're using that language, which is then translated into SQL, which is then translated by SQL to do the plan and do all the other stuff. So yeah, it's more of an art than it is. I could tell you, hey, if you're looking for this, then you do that, and it's all 1, 2, 3. You have to take a look at what's going on in your plan. If you have any SP Blitz cache is probably the one that I would use first, and see if you've got some really bad stuff going on there, and then kind of have to trace it back to the actual Entity Framework piece of code, and then rework those queries in Entity Framework so that those are a little bit better to the SQL Server. There's a lot of stuff that's going on out there. I think I've got something, a few posts on BrentOzar.com about some Entity Framework stuff. There may be another one coming out. I think Brent may have released the hounds on that on another one soon.
It was sitting around as a draft for like a year and a half. I was like, what is this? Richie done with that?
Turns out I was, and I just never looked. I mean, that wasn't published? I mean, who knew? I mean, I don't know. I've been busy on this constant thing.
Yeah, I mean, constantly busy working.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's not because of Entity Framework, but a lot of times it's the way the developers crafted the code in their link syntax, and the way that gets translated by the Entity Framework itself. There are ways you could go and write your link code so that the Entity Framework can write a better query, but it's a trial and error thing in a lot of ways. So I would say find your bad queries using SP Blitz Cache, trace them back to the link query, change your link query, and then kind of do that back and forth so that you could actually start tuning those queries just a little better. Or you could just drop it and say, I'm going to write a SQL statement for it or a stored procedure and just do it that way.
All sage advice. That's advice I'd follow too, if I ever had
If you
advice.
if you ever touch any framework.
Yeah. On that note, I'm gonna mess this name up because I have never seen a name that looks like this. Terje, Turgy. I don't know. I'm sorry, man, or woman. I don't know how that one goes. If you want to like phonetically give it to me in chat, I'll say your name right. Our development team complains about slow build times. So basically, they have this server where they spin up a whole bunch of new databases to do new builds of the app, it sounds like. Sometimes the server has a whole bunch of old databases on it that need to get cleaned up. It bloats out a bunch of stuff. It's not fun. See, in my head, I'm thinking, why are you reusing a server for this? Like, why wouldn't you just spin up a VM and have your new stuff all roll out to that VM? But maybe I'm missing something. Richie, what do you think?
I'm not even sure exactly what the question is over all that.
They have a question. The question is, wouldn't it be better to reuse some older databases and just run schema changes instead of building brand new databases each time?
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna back.
Okay. In a build scenario, you typically would want to build it from scratch. Okay, and you have all the data and you want to reload it. So just so you make sure that everything is kind of working and there's no, you're not worrying about deltas, right? So that when I run the test runs and it works every time. So you want to start from scratch. So yeah, so if you've got a slow database machine, it could be slow. I'd look for other ways to make that a little bit faster. I feel your pain every time that I run a build or check in something into Git for constant care. It automatically builds a new database for Postgres, and it loads data and it runs 500 different, maybe even more at this point, different SQL tests, and it checks a whole bunch of stuff. So I feel your pain. Ours don't take as long as you were. I think ours take about 10 minutes, but it does take a little bit of time, and the more you add, the longer it's going to take. So if you could start looking for different servers or different ways that maybe creating a VM or having a VM ready to go, I don't know. There's different ways, but having build servers and stuff like that, that's a whole different ballgame than what we're normally used to here at Brent Ozar. That's because you're talking about building it each and every time. Now, are you creating the server every time is really the big question, because if you're doing that install, yeah, that's going to take forever. But if the server is up and running and you're just creating databases, yeah, I'm not sure if I answered the question or not. But
or even if you can just spin up a VM that's like already imaged to have SQL Server on it, configured a certain way, and then just build stuff inside that VM, I think you'd be a lot better off than trying to just abuse this one poor machine over and over again.
Yeah, which is actually, we use a system called AppVeyor. It's in the cloud. That's exactly what it does. It has a standard image. We add some Node packages. I think we actually uninstall a Node version. When we install a different Node version, and then Postgres is already there. So we're not installing Postgres ourselves. It's there, and we're just saying create this database and create these tables, create these schemas, create all this other stuff, and then run some tests.
All right. That is all the questions that we have for this week. Thanks, everyone, for coming, hanging out, showing up. We will see you next week. Maybe Brent will even show up from a U-Haul. We don't know yet.
More from my parents' house next week.
Yeah. Woohoo! Hopefully I'll still be home, so I don't know. Get the whole thing. All right. Take care, y'all.